The sea raged. Waves like mountains tossed the small ship. Rain lashed down, cold and stinging. Captain Marsh gripped the helm, his face a mask of grim determination. He had seen storms before, but this was different. He could feel it in his bones, a deep, primal fear. The storm wasn't natural. Something lurked beneath the waves, something ancient and evil. He had heard the whispers amongst his crew, tales of a sleeping god, a monstrous entity called Cthulhu. As the storm raged on and the ship creaked and groaned under the onslaught, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were sailing into the maw of something terrible. Professor Armitage sat hunched over the ancient text, his brow furrowed in concentration. The weight of centuries seemed to press down on his shoulders as he delved deeper into the mysteries of the past. The air in his study was thick with the smell of dust and decay, the scent of forgotten knowledge. Each breath he took seemed to draw him further into the labyrinth of history. The lamplight flickered, casting long shadows across the cluttered room. Shadows that seemed to dance and whisper secrets of their own, adding to the eerie atmosphere. He adjusted his spectacles and peered closer at the faded script. The words seemed to shift and writhe on the page, as if alive with some ancient power. It was written in a language long dead, a language of strange symbols and disturbing imagery. Symbols that hinted at dark truths and forbidden knowledge. It spoke of a cult, a group of fanatics who worshipped an ancient cosmic entity known as Cthulhu. Their rituals were described in chilling detail, each one more horrifying than the last. They believed that this being lay sleeping beneath the waves, awaiting the day when the stars were right and it could rise again. The thought sent a shiver down Armitage's spine. The symbols, the rituals described, they were all too real, too detailed to be the product of mere imagination. It was as if the book was a direct link to the past, a past filled with darkness and terror. It was as if the book itself was a portal, a gateway to something dark and terrible, a world where nightmares were born and ancient evils lurked, waiting for their chance to return. The air in the clearing was thick with incense, the sweet, cloying scent mingling with the stench of fear, a fear that seemed to seep into the very ground beneath their feet. The flames of the bonfire danced and swirled, casting grotesque shadows on the surrounding trees, making them appear as if they were alive, writhing in agony. A group of figures stood in a circle around the fire, their faces hidden beneath dark hoods, their identities concealed in the depths of the night. They chanted in unison, their voices low and guttural, a sound that sent shivers down Inspector Legras's spine, a sound that seemed to resonate with the very essence of the forest. He had been tracking the cult for weeks, ever since that strange artifact had been stolen from the museum, an artifact that had baffled experts and intrigued him deeply. It was a small statue carved from an unknown greenish-black stone, depicting a monstrous humanoid figure with tentacles where its face should be, a figure that seemed to defy all logic and reason. Legras had scoffed at the time, dismissing the artifact as a mere curiosity, but now, as he watched the hooded figures swaying and chanting, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled onto something ancient and evil, something beyond his understanding. He had to stop them, but what could he do? The weight of his responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. He was one man against a force he didn't understand, a force that seemed to be rooted in the very fabric of the world, a force that threatened to consume him whole. Sarah Hawkins awoke with a gasp, her heart pounding in her chest as if it were trying to escape. She was drenched in sweat, her sheets twisted around her legs like a serpent's coils. The nightmare lingered, vivid and terrifying, refusing to fade away with the morning light. She had been standing on a vast, desolate plain, the ground beneath her feet slick with a strange phosphorescent slime that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The air was heavy, oppressive, and the sky above was a sickly green, casting an eerie glow over everything. And in the distance, rising from the sea like a monstrous cyclopean city, she saw it, Relier, the city of ancient nightmares. It was a city of impossible angles, of cyclopean blocks of stone covered in strange carvings and hieroglyphs that seemed to shift and change when she looked at them. The sight of it filled her with a profound sense of dread, a feeling of cosmic insignificance, as if she were but a speck in the vast, uncaring universe. And then, from the depths of that alien city, she heard a sound, a noise that seemed to resonate with the very core of her being. a low rumbling moan filled with an ancient and unfathomable malice, echoing through the corridors of her mind. It was the sound of something waking, something that had been slumbering for eons. She had been having these dreams for weeks now, ever since she had found that strange amulet in her grandfather's attic, an artifact that seemed to whisper secrets in the dead of night. Now she feared that the dreams were more than just dreams, that they were a premonition of something terrible, something that was coming. The chanting reached a fever pitch, the air thick with anticipation. The hooded figures swayed in unison, their movements becoming more frantic, more desperate. The flames of the bonfire leaped higher, casting grotesque shadows that danced and writhed like living things. Inspector Legrasse, hidden in the undergrowth, felt a cold dread grip his heart. He had seen enough. He had to get help. But as he turned to leave, he heard a sound that froze him in his tracks. It was a low, guttural moan emanating from the center of the circle. The chanting ceased abruptly, and an expectant hush fell over the clearing. Legrasse, his curiosity overriding his fear, crept closer to the edge of the trees. In the center of the circle, where the bonfire burned brightest, a figure was emerging from the flames. Professor Armitage could feel his mind slipping. The more he read of the ancient text, the more he felt himself being drawn into its web of madness. The symbols swam before his eyes, their meaning both alluring and terrifying. He knew he should stop, that he should destroy the book and try to forget what he had learned, but he couldn't. He was in too deep. The knowledge he had uncovered in that cursed book defied all logic, all reason. It spoke of a universe where humanity was but a fleeting afterthought, where ancient and powerful beings lurked in the shadows, waiting to reclaim their dominion. And the more he learned, the more he realized that the line between sanity and madness was a thin one indeed. Sarah's dreams had become her reality. The line between waking and sleeping had blurred, and the nightmare city of Relayeur had invaded her every thought. She saw its impossible angles in the corners of her vision, heard the echoes of its alien chanting in the howling of the wind. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that the city was rising, that the stars were right. The world around her seemed to warp and distort, the familiar becoming strange and unsettling. The people she passed on the street seemed alien, their faces contorted into grotesque masks of indifference. She was trapped in a waking nightmare, a world slowly succumbing to the influence of an ancient and malevolent force. The creature that emerged from the flames was unlike anything Inspector Legrasse could have imagined in his wildest nightmares. Its skin was a sickly green, slick with a viscous slime. Its head was a mass of writhing tentacles, each tipped with a razor-sharp beak. Its eyes, cold and malevolent, burned with an ancient hunger. Legrasse, paralyzed with terror, could only watch as the creature turned its gaze upon the terrified cultists. The cultists prostrated themselves before the creature, their voices raised in a cacophony of adoration and terror. Legrasse knew, with a sickening certainty, that he was witnessing the summoning of something ancient and evil, something that should have remained sleeping beneath the waves. And as the creature took a step towards the terrified cultists, its tentacles writhing with anticipation, Legrasse turned and fled. Professor Armitage stumbled through the darkened streets, his mind a maelstrom of terror and madness. He had to reach the others, had to warn them, but the words wouldn't come. The knowledge he had gained had shattered his sanity, leaving him a gibbering wreck. He could see them now, the creatures from his nightmares, stalking him through the shadows, their tentacles reaching for him, their eyes burning with an alien hunger. He ran, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his heart pounding in his chest. But there was no escape. The city was changing, warping around him, becoming something alien and hostile. He had glimpsed the truth, the terrible cosmic truth that lay hidden beneath the surface of reality. Sarah watched in horror as the world around her dissolved into chaos. The sky had turned a sickly green, the clouds swirling and churning like a vortex. The buildings were crumbling, their brickwork dissolving into dust. and from the heart of the city she could hear it, the low, rumbling moan, now deafening, shaking the very foundations of reality. People were screaming, running through the streets, their faces contorted in terror, but there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The city was Aurelia now, and they were all trapped within its nightmare embrace. She looked up, her gaze drawn to the swirling vortex of the sky, and there, emerging from the heart of the storm, she saw it. Aurelia had risen. The world was gone. In its place stood Uralaye, a city of madness and despair, ruled over by the ancient entity Cthulhu. The stars were right, and the great old one had awakened. Humanity was but a fleeting memory, a forgotten dream in the face of such cosmic horror. There was no escape, no hope, only the cold, indifferent vastness of the cosmos, and the knowledge that in the grand scheme of things humanity was utterly insignificant. Cthulhu had awakened, and the reign of chaos had begun.